I feel like following directions with Goofy is a really good idea, but there's one thing about it that I think is a really bad decision, but it's actually something that I personally find engaging. So I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. This is a Disney cartoon from 1982, and the narrator is taking us through various different things that you can do to understand instructions better. It's brilliantly narrated by Gary Owens. And he starts off by explaining the different kinds of instructions, such as written instructions, spoken instructions, and then he goes through some techniques to help you to retain that information, such as making sure you're actively listening, repeating things back, looking out for certain buzzwords. And I think the information's all very clearly presented and very useful and very helpful. But the one thing that makes it a little bit difficult is that there are so many clips from classic Disney cartoons. Now, in itself, that's great because there are so many clips, there's so much to look at, and it's like a trip down memory lane. I've been watching all of the Disney cartoons for a couple of years now, and kind of having a lot of them kind of recapped very quickly was quite engaging. But that's the problem. The editing is so quick that the brain is constantly going, okay, what am I looking at now? What clip am I looking at now? What's happening in this cartoon now? And because the brain is constantly engaging in that, it makes it significantly harder to listen to the words of the cartoon, to listen to what is being instructed. And I feel like they've done I don't understand how this got past people. I don't know how they thought that such a quick, fast paced cartoon, editing all of these clips together, was ever a good idea for an informational video, because the brain just focuses on the images, and you want to analyze the images, or at least ask yourself, what am I looking at? Going through the processes that you do when you see a new video clip. And that means you're less likely to pay attention to the genuinely really helpful information. And there were times when I found my attention, you know, thinking about the clip in detail, or the clips, because they were, locked in a very short space of time, and then kind of drifting in and out of the narration. And I feel like that's a really terrible thing to do. So, yes, it makes it engaging, but you're engaging with the wrong thing. And that's a huge problem for an educational short. So, I'm not entirely sure how Disney could get that so wrong. What they needed was something like the Goofy How To cartoons are exemplary. And this is what I actually thought this was when I was going into it, because the scenes are never busy. Each scene lasts a decent amount of time, so you have time to think through what you're seeing and marry it with the narration. But here that's just not possible. So I feel like it's actually, on the one hand, a terrible cartoon because it's failed at doing the one thing it's meant to do, and that's meant to be giving people something to listen to and absorb. Because the cartoons are far too engaging, there are too many of them, they're too closely edited together. As soon as you've acknowledged one, you're moving on to the next, you're going through the motions of recognizing it, telling your brain what it is, letting the brain accept that it's there, and then moving on again. And it's terrible for that reason. But the information that's given, and I did kind of force myself to listen to it a lot more closely the second time round, the information is really good, it's really helpful. And because the clips don't always perfectly represent what is being narrated, unlike, say, a Goofy How To cartoon, it just means that everything's disjointed. You're having to make the effort to connect the words with the images, which means you're not making the effort to actually absorb the words. So, in a way, it's actually terrible. But from an entertainment perspective, yeah, it's great fun. Great, loads of great clips, loads of variety of characters, which makes the title a bit weird. It's not really following directions with Goofy. It's slightly more Goofy focused, but we still have Donald and Mickey and loads of other characters, so it's also a kind of a misleading title, to be honest. So, yeah, on the one hand, I enjoyed it, but for all of the wrong reasons. I feel like it had a purpose, and the narration met that purpose, but the animation didn't. And given the purpose of this cartoon, I feel like that's a bit of a problem.